A heist gone wrong, escaping on a boat, and crash landing on the island of Guarma. This chapter was an unexpected turn in the Red Dead story, but it makes sense in the great scheme of things. You know, we get more character development for Dutch and Arthur, and it makes sense that the story went here because of the mess caused back in St. Denis. But overall, if you guys know me and watch my other videos, you might know that Chapter 5 is my least favorite chapter in Red Dead Redemption 2. As many of you guys, I assume this is your least favorite one because a lot of people in the Red Dead community say this is the weakest chapter. But looking back on it, it definitely has a lot of great moments, but it falls flat comparing it to the other chapters. You know, take it like the Star Wars saga, episodes 1 through 9. Attack of the Clones is my least favorite movie / chapter in that story, but it still serves a purpose. It has a lot of great moments and it pushes the story forward, kind of like how Chapter 5 is in Red Dead Redemption 2. But in this video, I want to dive deep into this part of the game and talk about what they did right and what I didn't like and what I think they could have done better. Let's talk about what they got right. So what did Guarma get right? Well, for starters, this was a perfect lead-in from the previous chapter where we had that massive heist that went to shit. But we lost some gang members. John ends up in prison. Most of the gang members are scattered throughout Lemoyne. Arthur, Dutch, Micah, Javier, and Bill are stuck on this boat. And even more bad luck hits them when they go through a massive storm in the boat and everyone ends up crashing on this beach. This was a major setback for the gang, and it proved to us, the audience witnessing this for the first time, that this story has major consequences. Even when this chapter is over, the overall weight of people's actions still stick, and Chapter 6 is a completely different ballgame compared to Chapter 4. Another thing that they got right was they showed us more of this world. You know, Red Dead 2 is a beautiful game, and one of my favorite parts of the game is the open world we can explore. We have so much to see in the game. We got mountains, swamps, big cities, deserts, forests, and so many other cool locations. And this game takes it a step further and it shows us the Caribbean. And just even though it's just a little bit, Guarma is a beautiful location and it's so cool, even though we were only there a little bit. The fact that we were able to see other locations in this game was an amazing feature. Now let's talk about what I didn't like. One thing no one really talks about is how extremely short this chapter is. Like, honestly, you can complete this whole thing in about like 2 hours or so. I'm not really saying that's like bad or anything, but when the other chapters take around 4 to 6 hours to complete, it just feels like Rockstar didn't really care about this section of the game a whole lot, which I'll kind of get into later. But I think this adds to the overall theme of each chapter because every single chapter has its own like mini story in a sense. Like Chapter 3, we have the Braithwaites versus the Greys, which I absolutely loved. You know, in Chapter 4, we have the Angelo Bronte Mafia and the whole Saint Denis thing. But in this chapter, we have a story about the Cuban army and the rebellion. This sounds like a cool concept for the story, but the execution really falls flat for me. They really didn't set up this part of the game that good in my opinion. And the overall storyline really felt rushed and there were really no stakes. I probably would have cared more about these people and the war if we weren't in the rush to get back home. And because this chapter is so short, we don't really get a chance to get involved in this whole other world a whole lot. And I wish we did. For some reason, they did cut a lot of shit out of this whole part of the game. If we look into the game files, we can see that Rockstar had bigger plans for Guarma. But I guess when the game was getting finished, they decided to cut a lot from it. We only get access to a small portion of the island of Guarma. And we could have seen that they were supposed to have access to more parts of the island. But in the final product, we are only limited to a small quarter of the area. And also, the missions in this chapter were very disappointing. Most of them were just us fighting some guys sometimes, and us mostly trying to figure out how to get off the island. And the final mission of Guarma, where we end up finding the huge battleship, even though it really felt very out of place, it was still really cool nonetheless. I've already mentioned this part in my Guarma best mission video, so go check that out. Now let's talk about how they could have made this better. First, let's talk about the free roaming on the island. In this chapter, it's really difficult to explore really any parts of the island. Most of the part of the island is under control of the army, and we don't have much access to it. I feel like I'm in a box whenever I play this part of the game, and I really can't stand it. And another thing that they should have should have made the whole island playable instead of just a small part. Imagine if we got to actually explore this whole area, and maybe there are other towns around the map that we could have visited. I can imagine they could have done something like sort of like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where there are small towns on an island and other parts of the island are under control of the army. Maybe there could have been like 1 or 2 stranger missions also thrown in there. Then they could have made the overall story more fleshed out. You know, they could have gave us more characters, and perhaps they could have tied it to the Saint Denis heist, where the army are also looking for us. Maybe they're working with the Pinkertons or Cornwall. This could have been more interesting and added more stakes. Also, they should have added more areas to explore. Maybe some caves and unique animals that we could have hunted. I know that there are animals that you can hunt in the game. They should have made this area feel more like how it is on the main map, where there are plenty of animals to hunt and there are more locations to explore. Also, they should have made this part of the game at least 3 hours or longer. You know, give us more time here so we can actually appreciate the cool scenery. And once we actually get home, it would actually feel like we were there for a long time, just like how Arthur and the gang felt when they arrived back home. So, in conclusion, Guarma definitely had a lot of great moments. At times, it was very fun, but in the end, the game really suffered from the lack of exploration, a limited map, and a weaker story than the other chapters, and lots of cut content. Guarma is without a doubt the worst chapter in the game. It's uncomparable when the other chapters have such an immersive storyline and so much in depth. Guarma is just one of those parts of Red Dead Redemption 2 people like for the time being, but it could have been so much more.